episode of the Halfstep Pod. I am Connor Lane and joined today by special guest Elise Cranny, my ex-teammate at Stanford and current runner for Bowerman TC. It's had a couple of huge monster weeks here with massive PRs. Really excited to talk to you today, Elise, in this interview. How are you?
I'm good. I'm pumped to be on the Halfstep Pod. I've been listening to you and Grant in season 2, so excited to be a special guest.
Yeah, I don't tell Grant, but I have a feeling you're gonna do a better job hosting. We'll just see
He's
how
got
it goes.
big shoes to fill. You guys
I
have a
guess
good,
so.
back and forth. So we'll
But we
see.
have the Stanford connection too. We'll see. We'll pick right back up like an English class 4 years ago or whatever it was at this point.
Exactly. I know, the creative writing days.
It was a time. It was a lot of stories from class. But talking about you and your accolades specifically, Elise, I mean, really where to start. It's been a few years now that you've been in Bowerman, and really things started firing on all cylinders when you ran 14:48 for them a couple seasons ago. But last year, I mean, so much you accomplished, including winning the 5K at the Olympic trials, making the team in the 5,000 meters, finishing 13th in the final in Tokyo. And then obviously the last couple months have just been some truly, truly impressive marks, including running the American indoor record in the 5K, smashing Shalane's old record, which we're definitely going to get into, running 14:33 at BU with Gabriella, your teammate, running 14:31, and then a monster 10K in the same race where Grant ran the American record, running just off of it in 30:14:66 and running like 7K of that race solo. So another just absolutely incredible effort, finishing just a second behind Molly Huddle's 30:13. So this last month for you has really seemed to be, I guess, not a culmination because you're still working towards Eugene 2022, right, and trials and all of this, but you've really been able to lay your fitness on the line and put up some massive time. So just big picture, like how does that feel after these last couple races here?
Yeah, it feels great. I mean, I have been thinking about this. I think like last year, just with it being the like trials in the Olympics, wasn't like, there weren't a lot of opportunities to like go out and run like super fast just because there was more championship style kind of racing. So I think, that like, after like a year or another like 2 years of, professional training and consistency, that there's like, that strength is building and the times are coming, but to actually be able to have like both the opportunities to run just like a fast 5 and a fast 10 this indoor season was really fun. And I think you could see that for, Grant and Mo and just, everyone on our team, like just really, focusing our altitude camp on, gearing up for some really fast races, because we know that like as we get later into the summer, it will be primarily championship style races, which you never know if they're going to go fast or not. So it's nice to kind of do an effort where it's like a bit more controlled.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm glad that you brought up like kind of the heavier championship style racing that you'd been doing the last like year or so. Basically, since Bowerman had all those like end of the COVID season, like kind of time trial meets where like Shelby ran like 14:20, like low, and everyone was running ridiculous marks. There were some sub 13s on the men's side. You guys really have been, I mean, there was the 10 last spring, like a year ago, that was kind of focused on achieving the world standard. But you guys have been more in these like championship style, like tactical races, prepping for the trials, which were kind of early, and then the games. And it does. I heard you say on Chris Chavez's pod, the Sidious Mag, which everyone should go check out. I think that just dropped yesterday. That you really were excited about running this indoor 5K at BU because you hadn't really had a chance to run like a kind of time trial-y, like we're gonna go max, going for like the lowest possible time here, not just a championship style race. Hadn't had the opportunity in like a season or 2 seasons, maybe more. So was that, I guess, yeah, definitely starting with these most recent races because they're probably top of mind and been some massive PRs. What was like, was that a big part of running this fast 5K, just knowing, hey, I'm probably going to get this PR coming from 14:48, which is really fast, but I'm really fit and I haven't had a chance to pop off in a long time, at least over just 5,000 pure meters.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it was, the 14:48 was at that time trial in 2020. So it had been almost 2 years. And I think, I kind of talked about this, like you said, on the podcast with Chris, but just going into that 5K, I was like hanging on for dear life in workouts and just like finishing half of them or as much as I could. So I think the last 2 years, like being able to see, the difference and just like being able to handle more of those like fast paces for longer in training, I was excited to see how that was going to translate to a race. And think I kind of, you can get glimpses of it. Like I think, in the prelim and final of the 5K at the Olympics, it was like, okay, I ran 14:55, which was like my second fastest time compared to that. And I was like, okay, that felt, way, better than the 14:48 and was only a couple seconds off in a championship style race. So I think you kind of know that, like faster times are in there, but to actually be able to do it, and like you said, be able to do it with Gabriella and, have both of us go under Shalane's old record was pretty cool.
Yeah, smash the record. I mean, was that, what was the desired pacing for that race? You guys definitely closed like really fast to make up all that ground, but did you think anything like 14:33 was possible? I mean, it kind of reminds me of Grant coming into that, like thinking, okay, 13:01 is the American record and ending up running way under it. Did you have a similar feeling there, or were you predicting to run closer to 14:30?
Yeah, no, I think it was kind of a surprise too of knowing like, okay, maybe we try to run under like 14:45. And so I think, yeah, the first 2K, I was like, oh man, like we're at like 15 flat pace. Are we gonna even be able to get the record? And then, like you said, I just think sometimes you get in the race and you don't really realize how fast, you squeeze it down or start closing. I think that's a fun thing about both the 5 and the 10 is like even just a couple laps that are a little bit faster can like really take pretty big chunks of time off that you don't really realize until you're crossing the line and you're like, oh man, we must have like really squeezed it down because now I see 14:30s on the clock. So that was definitely exciting.
Yeah, I mean, one thing anecdotally with 5Ks, I feel like that last K or 800 is, especially in like elite races, such a make or break. I mean, maybe even just compared to other events, just because of how like the unique distance of time that like 1,000 meters is. But you get people going in a direction forward, and you get people going in a direction backwards over that last K, and it can often be like 10, 15-second gaps, maybe greater, just depending on like if you're ready to roll at that moment around like 3.5 or 4K. I feel like that, to me, looking at like your progression, I feel like that transition from, instead of just hanging on in the second half of races, to being like the aggressor and the person pushing that, has been a major difference in running these phenomenal times. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that though.
Yeah, it's a huge difference. I think that's like, the strength piece. And I think part of that is also just like like the years under Jerry or the more like years. I don't know, like we like to use it like the term like training age on the team. It's like, I think like just having like several more years of consistent like running and mileage under me, just like you're that much stronger to be able to finish the race instead of like, I mean, I remember that, like I vividly remember the first 5K I ran on this team, or one of the first ones that I ran on the team in like the summer of 2019. And it was like, it was in Berlin, and I went out the first like 3K basically at 15 flat pace, just like, I'm going to like will myself to do this. And the last 2K was just like absolutely like, miserable, like, which I feel like happens in the 5 or the 10. Like if you go out too hard, like it hits you hard. And so I think like that has been a big change is, yeah, like being able to handle that. And even, if you go out like a little bit in over your head, like maybe you are like slowing down a little bit, but it's not kind of like the massive blow up just because you have like this huge kind of foundation and, strength and consistency beneath you. So it's like, feel better able to handle that, which is nice. It's like, it's fun to feel strong at the end of a race instead of hanging on for dear life,
No, that's got to be the best feeling. And yeah, and you looked so strong at the end of both of them, even if, especially in that 10K, like the pain cave a little bit, which I know we'll talk more about. But going back really quick to that idea of like going in maybe a little bit over your head. So like the strength and obviously like the training in your pro group, or just for listeners out there, because I feel like we often try to contextualize like Grant's training or my training, like for how it can be applied at like, everyone's unique levels. And I feel like the overall blocks of training, like listening to your coach, following through with that, is going to make you a better runner if you can stay consistent and healthy and kind of just go through the plan. But in terms of racing specifically, Do you think there's big value in like trying to go out and hit like sub 15-minute 5K pace, maybe before you're like ready for it as you were like this indoor season or in 2020 when you ran 14:48? Did you rely on like, hey, my experience in Berlin where maybe I did go backwards a little bit towards the end was still helpful because I was at that pace for 2 miles? Or are you more of a, or do you see more logic in maybe like starting out slower and just trying to simulate like closing 5Ks hard because that will help me? Do you have like a preferred strategy as you're kind of
Yeah.
gaining this fitness?
Yeah, I feel like it's almost a good mix of both, you know? Like I think you want some races where you feel like you're finishing strong, so you're not, I don't know, I think that was something for me that I kind of think about like in college when I had some injuries of like when you're having like race after race where you're like dying, I think it can get in your head for sure, you know? And it's like you don't want that to become like a pattern where then you kind of are expecting it to happen even if you're like in, better shape now. But I also think it can be really good too to kind of have that mix of both because I think it's like, yeah, I think that like Berlin 5K was really helpful because it's like, okay, this is what I want my goal race pace to be, and I'm not. I think gives you like a good indicator of where you're at too, and I think racing like that also helps you in certain situations to find your limit more because it's like, okay, like I'm strong enough to make it to 3.5K at this pace, like,
Exactly.
next time I'm gonna try to make it to 4.5K. Like I think it's like, those are like marks that you can kind of tangibly see your progress, which I think can give people like a lot of momentum too. So I think having a little bit of both though, so you're like staying like mentally excited and not being defeated, but also like going out, I think it's important because I think that's how we find what we're capable of is sometimes going out, a little bit in over our head and then realizing like, oh, I had more than I thought. And maybe you leave too much on the table if you don't do that.
Yeah, no, I think that's like a really good observation. Definitely seeing how far you can make it in a race at your desired race distance, even if there's a little bit of a blow up at the end if you're not ready for it, can be, I think, a really valuable training tool. You're exactly right. You can't, if it starts going to your head and you start thinking I blow up at the end of races, and that probably is not a net
Yeah.
positive. So it's maintaining that mental fortitude of I'm going through a process right now trying to get somewhere. But yeah, no, I love hearing stuff like that. I love hearing like similarly, Grant would always talk about getting worked his first year on the team. I know you've spoken about like the adjustment as well. I know it seems to be a really difficult adjustment for anyone coming out of college and training with such elite people. I feel like this last year or 2 years you've really ascended, but it maybe was built on a lot of grinding and a lot of struggles early on as a pro.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that's kind of what you were saying with even the race strategy. Like, I think in some ways, that's like really good though, because I think I was able to find my limit a lot more. And it's like a constant process each workout to be like, I did a good job, even though I only did 50% and was like getting dropped, But like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's like a good strategy. It was really important for me to learn. It's like, forcing you to work on those things of like not comparing to others and like celebrating your own steps forward, even if it's not like ultimately where you like, dream of being, but knowing like, okay, you have to take steps along the way. It's like joining the team. It's like, it's like I want to be working out with Shelby and Carissa, but that's like not where I'm at right now. Or like, for me, a really good stimulus would be finishing 50% of the workout with them. And sometimes you have to take it. It's like really hard to do, but take a step back and be like, but this is like a really good workout for me and I'm doing the best that I can. And I think, kind of joining a group like this, it actually like really forces you to like work on those strategies, which I feel like are really helpful. And then again, I think it really like elevates everyone as an athlete. Like I know for me, it was like when you see, what Shelby and Carissa or, older people on the team are doing and you're like, I want to do that. It's like, then you don't really limit yourself because you're like, okay, I can be there one day too. I just have to kind of keep grinding, keep staying the course, which I think is really cool that you have something to be like shooting for and people to be looking up to kind of challenge what you thought was possible.
No, I mean that's awesome, and it sounds like it really is just a testament to your own mental fortitude to like endure kind of getting beat up a lot early on, but still being able to look within and find your own positive outlook and know truthfully that you're still getting so much better as an athlete, stringing healthy seasons together. It kind of I feel like that segues really nicely into your mostly solo effort in the 10K a couple of weeks ago, like running 7K alone. I feel like it's a very similar mental attitude of like, I have to look inward and know that I'm doing a good job for me. Now, almost for the opposite reason, because you're lapping almost the entire field in the race. So talk me through that 10. Did you know that you were going to have to spend so much of that race alone? What was your target pre-race? I mean, was it going all the way after that American record of 30:13 from Molly Huddle? I'd love to hear as much background to that as you have.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, Jerry had talked to me a little bit and he was like, I think, we're ready to go after the American record. He had kind of said, I think for a while, it sounds like he was working really hard to find a pacer and, was just struggling to put it together. And so then our newest teammate, Lucia, was able to pace through 3K, which was amazing. And then Taylor Warner as well. And Jerry wasn't really sure how long they were going to go. He was like, maybe 2 miles, maybe 4K, maybe they can make it to 5K. So I think he didn't really know. So I think, that was kind of what we talked about, is like staying calm no matter how you are going to have to run the race or how much of it you're going to have to do by yourself, of just like, okay, just get in that zone. He was really focused on like getting in the zone and making those like 72s to 73s feel like rhythm. And I think that was really helpful that he said that. And even, he was helpful in terms of talking about Molly Huddle got the record at the 2016 Rio Olympics, but he was like, for a lot of the race, like she, ended up by herself and she was just clicking off laps. And that actually gave me a lot of confidence too, because she's, someone that I've looked up to. And I'm like, okay, there were a lot of times in the race where maybe she was by herself. And kind of like you were saying, it's, to do that, she had to be really inwardly focused on like the race and the world record, whatever was going on around her. But she was like really focused on getting that record and clicking off the lap. So, I think that was helpful to kind of have a discussion about that before and be like, okay, I'm just going to get in a rhythm. I don't know how far the pacers are going to go. However long they take me will be, super helpful. And then I just have to get in that rhythm.
I mean, it's similar to talking about Grant's race in another way too, which is like, there's not that many like ladies who are probably able to run sub 15:10 for a 5K who don't want to be part of the race itself. Like Grant had like more, there's a lot of men with the group right now, and had guys like Woody, who is just like a next level pacer, and decided he didn't want to run the whole race. Josh Thompson, Sam Atkin, Ollie, like had guys taking them through, but like it's hard to find pacers, I feel like, for these really difficult marks that you're chasing, who want to be in it for that long and kind of sacrifice their own race and just can run a 5K at your 10K pace, which is kind of ridiculous to think about.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think especially with the 10K, there just aren't, because it's such a longer race. It's not like a 15 where there's like opportunities every couple weeks. So like you said, I think anyone who's like could do that wants to be in there running a good 10K, because it was like an incredible field and it's going to be set up well. So it's like hard to get people,
especially with the scenario with the trials 10K being like a month before the rest of the trials. It seems like anyone who could hit the mark might as well hit the mark and try to race it. That'll be an interesting dynamic too. I'm excited to hear both you and Grant's thoughts moving forward on like how that 10K is going to set up, being so far out ahead of the rest of the trials.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see. But I mean, that's what we were talking about too. I think that's why like this was such a good race, because it's just like there's not that much time. Like if you're talking about the end of May, there's not that much more time for like a 10K between now and being like really ready to go at the end of May. So it's kind of like definitely changes the dynamic, but it will be exciting. I think it will make for really good races.
It'll be like a complete race. Yeah, like there's no reason for someone who could make it to not do it, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So talk to me about the pace lights. Not quite to the part that everyone wants to talk about with the pace lights. We'll get to there, but running so much of this race solo, and I know you were slightly ahead of the pace lights for a lot of that stretch. Were you completely alone out there, or between having, Shalane and Jerry yelling splits and knowing you were ahead of the pace lights, does that help at all? Like knowing, okay, I'm ahead of this and just staying there, because you weren't level with it to the point where you could like know you were exactly clicking off what you need to do. Like, what were you using for that 7K, I guess, getting through it solo to stay in that pure rhythm? Was it just, you look, I've worked out at race pace a ton, I know exactly where it is? Or could you use some combination of lights, and were you hearing splits and that kind of thing to keep you on it once you were solo?
Yeah, I was hearing splits. I've kind of gone back and forth. I was getting splits basically every 200. So Shalane was at 1 200, and then Pascal was at the other 200. So I was getting a ton of feedback on the splits, which are really helpful. And I think when I first finished, I was like, oh man, like should I have just tried to stay like right with the pace lights the whole time, and then focus on like out kicking them the last 800 or something. And I was like, maybe I think I had a couple laps that were like a bit aggressive toward the beginning, that maybe if the pace lights were there, and then like I don't know, then you're not thinking, you're just right with them. But I also think there's something to be said about like really getting in your own rhythm, and sometimes it's like that means each lap is like I don't know, 0.2 or 0.3 here or there. But I feel like I kind of just like when I was in the midst of it and trying to find that rhythm, I don't think I was really paying attention to the lights or trying to stay with them. I was just, trying to hear 72 points. And I think that kind of became my focus. So yeah, I was glad that I had, that feedback kind of every 200 until like the last mile, when you kind of hear that you're falling off, and then you're like, I don't really want the feedback. I mean, you do want the feedback, but you're like, oh my gosh, like I was running 72 so well, and now I'm trying to get back there. But
Well, I'm interested in the mentality around running 72s, because while it's certainly fast, it's also something that you have to hit for 6 miles. So like, how much are you throttling back in like the first half of the 10K versus like really I mean, you're still kind of stepping on the gas, right? So like, what is that mixture like? Because it's obviously still a super fast pace, like objectively, but you're doing it for 6 miles. Are you like holding back in that 71, 72 range at all? Are you like trying to stop yourself from ripping it, or is it still just, look, I'm racing and like I'm kind of laying out this effort? It's still already really hard. Like, where's that
yeah.
progression like?
Yeah, I feel like it's honestly still something that I'm trying to master about the 10K. I think I don't know, of being like, I remember like last year before I ran the first one, like Emily Infeld, like I vividly remember her talking about that. She's like, you can't be like too excited at the beginning, because it's like you'll feel really good, because if you're gonna run 10K at that pace, ideally you will feel like semi okay coming through 5K. Like you shouldn't
That's
be,
all you can
hopefully
ask
you're not
for
like
sure.
redlining.
Yeah.
But I think it's something where, yeah, it's just, I think I'm still trying to figure out, kind of, like I said, I think like a couple of those like 71 points where I felt good, like right when the Pacers came off, maybe came to like, bite me a little bit like the last 1200. And I'm like, oh, maybe if I ran a couple 73s, but I think, I don't know, it's so hard for me, because I'm like, those splits basically seem so close to being the same. Like, how could that take
Yeah.
that much out of you? But I think with that long of an event over time, yeah, that's something that I'm still trying to figure out. But I think that's where like the mental piece is so important, of like, trying to like a lot of teammates that ran the 10K have told me that, of like trying to make the first 5K feel like a tempo, and it's not going to, but like I think when you can kind of like cultivate that mindset, it can be really helpful, of like, okay, I want this to be like as relaxed and smooth as possible, and I'm still like running really fast, but how can I make it kind of feel like that tempo effort, so I'm not like, so I'm ready, I have the energy and I'm ready to go like the second half of the race.
For sure. Yeah, it sounds like something you'll have more experience with, because this was only your third 10K, right?
Yeah.
Third or fourth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's definitely a lot of room to learn more about the limits while already being right at the AR. Let's talk about that last mile or last 2K or so, because you were definitely up on the pace lights, and yeah, like I'm sure you could hear the splits maybe slowing down. I don't know kind of what the thought process is there, but then like we were all watching in the dorm, and like your close was ridiculous. We were like, oh no, like it seems like it's lost, and then we're able to drop a 67 there at the end, past the pace lights, which turns out we're set at 30:16, to give you like a better gauge of it, thinking you could maybe close off of that rather than
Yeah.
the AR of 30:13. Like, where did that last kind of kit come from when you hit like 500 to go or so, and you're like, the lights are in front of me, there's a lap to go, and you'd really been like deep in the pain cave at that point?
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, it was definitely hard to rally. I think my second to last lap is like, I was like, oh man, like this feels like it's unraveling quickly.
And that was like a
um,
74 or 75. So like
yeah,
it definitely you while still running a ridiculous pace had slowed down to probably missing the record by like a little bit here, and then
yeah,
we're able to pull it back with a 67.
yeah. I think I don't really know what happened. I think before the race, one of my like the two things that I really wanted to focus on were, get to the last 2K as like smooth as possible. And then I was like, last year I had told myself in the 10K, I was like, I want to have a really good last 500. And I don't know. I think I've had a tendency sometimes to say that and then just kind of get comfortable at the pace that you're at and like not really go for it. And I was like, remember being so bothered after that race. I was like, I wish that I would have just like ripped the last 500. And so going into this race, I was like, okay, the last like 450, at least, no matter how you're feeling, like you need to make it, a really good close. Like, that you have, the wheels from the 1500 and from kind of that speed training, and I don't know, like you're tapping into a different system, and like usually you feel better when you start to close. So I think I hit that point and I was just like, I'm not going to do the same thing as last year where you kind of get stuck in a rhythm and don't go. And I think that's like the point in the race where like the pacing lights were so helpful, because it felt like I was like racing next to someone. Like it was just, I forget, I think someone had told me at like 450 or 400, they're like, just look up at the lights. And that was like huge, because I feel like I wasn't really quite aware too much of what else was going on. I was just trying to get to the finish line. But I think that was something that was so like tangible that I could cling on to, that I was like, okay, just like look up and try to get them. And then, yeah, like I said, I think it gave me a lot of energy, like especially the last like 200 and the last 100, to just feel like you were racing. So, it's like you're neck and neck with someone and you're trying to outkick them, which is kind of like a crazy concept that you can get that from the pacing lights, but that's what it felt like.
Yeah, and then finishing ahead of the pacing lights, but just short of the record. I know in Chris's interview, you mentioned like you knew you saw it turn to 30-14, so you knew you had just missed out. And I'm sure there's some initial feelings of disappointment, but like, what is your thought process now? Is it still largely disappointment at missing the record by such a short amount? Are you simultaneously like still pumped about running such a massive PR and good time? Like, where's your head at holistically looking back at that race a couple weeks later? Because like you said, I mean, as awesome as it was, you don't get the chance to run that many all out 10Ks. So I'm sure there's a little bit left on the table where you're like, yeah, just talk to me how you're feeling about that.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that's kind of like with Jerry in general. We just don't get to race that much. So I think it makes it sometimes feel like every race is just like, you're like, okay, that was my one chance to run a super fast 10K. And I think, yeah, it's kind of funny because it's like you're so close. And I'm like, yeah, I'd much rather be a second and a half off than like 10 seconds off or something.
For
But it's
sure.
almost like that double edged sword of like also being a second and a half off kind of like drives you a little bit crazy,
It would drive me
because you're just
insane.
like
Yeah.
so close, especially like, with the like second to last lap. I'm like, you could have gotten like a second and a half on the second. But you say that now out of the race,
Yeah.
it's like, it's much easier to say now. And so I think there's like that little piece where you kind of just like keep replaying it and try to find like where you could have possibly gotten 1.5 seconds. But I think overall, like I feel happy about it, more so just like proud of like the way that I ran. I think that was a big step for me, like mentally, and also just like I said, my like couple of things to focus on were like the last 2K, the last 500, and then also I was just like, I want to finish on empty. Like regardless of the result, I want to like finish knowing that I gave everything I had. And I do feel like I did that. So even though, it's easy to go back and be like, I could have found 1.5 seconds. Like when I finished, I was like, I'm toasted. Like I did everything I could. So I think
As
in
you
that
should be.
regard,
Yeah.
it's like, like I'm pleased with how I ran, and being able to also rally when it felt like things were kind of falling off a bit with 400.
Well, and we can't technically count any of this, but I feel like you ran like at least 10,100 meters in that race, just going around lap traffic the last like 3 or 4K. So I don't know where the actual 10K line was, but
Maybe
we'll see
that
if
would.
if we
That would
stick
be
you on
my
the inside
segment and a
lane
half.
one, yeah, if we stick you on the inside lane one for an entire race, like we'll see what that would equate out to. I'm sure you will get another chance eventually, whether it's, you know, at a Worlds or an Olympics, or if it's another version of the 10 in future years. But yeah, definitely, it definitely seems like a long wait to get like the fast opportunities. So
Yeah.
while it's an incredible result, I know someone as competitive as yourself is probably thinking about it, but I guess it's a healthy level of thought, right? Like
Yeah.
if
Well,
you
I
were
do.
perfectly satisfied, it'd be like, well, like, how am I going to get amped for the next thing? I guess.
Yeah. And I think like we were talking about earlier, I think that will be good about having the 10K before USA's. Like I feel like it's going to be a really, really good competitive fast race because it stands alone, you know, by itself. And I think that will make for a really good race too. So there'll be another opportunity soon.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. And you don't have to tip your hand at all, but I mean, like making it an aerobic effort might seem to benefit you having just gone through this. But obviously, a 10K in a championship style race it's a really risky, bold move to like take any piece of leading that. So I mean, don't say anything about it if you don't want to, but it'll be because because so many competitors I'm sure are just glued into the Halfstep Pod. But definitely it'll be interesting to see like what the decision is there, because I feel like I meant to ask you this. In your head, do you view yourself as a certain distanced runner? Because I feel like in college it was often like Elise does the 15 and she can move up to the 5 and the 3, but she's like kind of a 15 girl. Like that was what you like ran so well in high school, that and the 8, honestly. Do you see yourself as a 1500-meter runner? Or do you see yourself as a 10K girl? I mean, I guess in an ideal world, you just see yourself as a really good runner, right? And like try not to stick like a distance associated with that. But where do you feel like your maximum ability lies across that like spectrum of 15 to 10?
Yeah. I feel like right now I would probably say a 5K runner. I still think I want to say 15, but I think the 5K like allows me to combine like kind of that speed from the 15 with some strength, and then I think the 10 like I'll eventually want to move even more toward focusing on that, but hopefully like later in my career, like I think kind of 15.5 is still where I see myself.
Well, the 5 is what you won the U.S. trials in, and it's also what you made the Olympic team in, and it helps with the transition to kind of discussing that, because I thought you had something really like valuable to say in your post race interview after the 10K, where you said going to the Olympics for you and kind of seeing what like the women who are medaling, like the world class like medalists, right, like Dababa and the people who are winning these races and are the world record holders, like seeing them on like truthfully this different level than like maybe where the top American women's times have been, and similar with like the elite African men compared to maybe like American men's times, like seeing that kind of divide really made you hungry to maybe pursue bigger goals like in the 10K, because we've talked like the best women's 10Kers in the world are running like in the 29 mid and low, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like are way down in there. So talking about like being a little bit dissatisfied after even such a phenomenal race, I guess, yeah, talk me through that, like how you approach seeing where these like the best women in the world are, and how has that kind of framed your mindset about your running and like what you're striving to do on a
Yeah.
daily basis and in the races.
Yeah, I think you use the right words of like it just being like really eye-opening and make you hungry for more. Like, I mean, I don't know, going all the way back to high school, I even remember that. Like, I thought state was as big as it got. And then I went to like my first national meet and I was like, oh my gosh, like there's this whole other world out there. And I
This
kind
is as big as it gets. New Balance Nationals.
of, yeah. And so it's like, I feel like it was a similar experience, you know? It's like, and I was just like, got there and I was like, oh my gosh, there's this whole other world. And like, obviously I was like following along with the sport and I knew that, but I think like being there and being in that race is like even feels different than like watching, because it's like you're in the race now and you can kind of, I don't know, I think I was like, okay, I'm in the race, like I'm closer than I've ever been to competing against these people, but I still feel like far off. I mean, like you said, like I was going backwards the last 1K and Safan was closing, and I don't know, some crazy time. I don't remember what she closed in the last 1K, but something crazy with like 57 last 400. And I think that's where, kind of like we were even talking about when I like joined Bowerman and you're, seeing how, Shelby and Carissa and people are training and you're like, your eyes are just opened. You're like, holy crap, like this is, what it takes to train this way. I didn't even know, you could train this hard and it was possible. And so I think, that's kind of the same thing of like, I needed to have that experience to be like, oh my gosh, okay, these women are, running 14:35 with like a super, conservative first 3K, but they're able to have so much left. And even just like, being around them in the prelim and seeing what they're doing. And I think that totally just, again, like elevates the entire bar for the sport if you like allow it to be like motivating and inspiring of like, okay, if they can do that, like I can do that too. It's just going to take me some time to get there, but I think like believing that that's possible and being what you're striving for is really important, because I think, I think that just has totally like influenced my training since that race. Like coming back this fall, I just felt like I was so hungry coming off of that, because I was like, wow, okay, I need to like gain strength. I need to bring more intention to practice. I need to work on the mindset of things and cultivating my confidence and like working on different race strategies so I'm more prepared for, races at the global level. And I think it was just super super eye-opening and super motivating to like, okay, we need to keep like raising the bar in American middle distance running. And I think, that's what's really cool across the board. I mean, even watching like Molly Seidel medal in the marathon, and like watching just
Definitely.
how like middle distance running and distance running in America has, just continued to get better and better. I'd say, especially over the last several years. I think that's something that's like really exciting, because it's like, we want to be, competing on the global stage. And that, it's a huge point of motivation, I would say.
Yeah, well, because not that it was like a whirlwind for you, but that was really your first like worlds or Olympic experience in Tokyo. And you think like making the Olympic final, while I'm sure it brought you a lot of confidence, like it's interesting to hear still kind of feeling a little bit like a passenger in that kind of environment. But I guess like taking valuable lessons away from that is so important. It just because those races just seem so fartlicky and so like about really trying to be comfortable in a really difficult situation. Did you have any like just being face to face with like the best in the world and in that kind of final? Did you have any main takeaways on specifically, like we can talk about just stacking years of training and fitness together, but within the race, when you talk about the mental piece, was there anything that they seemed to do really well? Maybe it was just a byproduct of being at like this elite level of fitness, but maybe it wasn't. Did you notice anything specifically?
Yeah, I think, I mean, the two things I would say, the big thing is before the race, like standing on the line, like looking back and watching videos, like just the stance of like a lot of people that were in the top, 5 or top 10 even. It's like you can tell they're just like calm and confident and ready to go. Where I definitely think, I felt a little bit like, I don't know, for lack of a better word, like that imposter syndrome where you're saying, then you're like, okay, you're like trying to be like, yeah, I'm ready to go. But like, you definitely don't feel that like confidence, like your first time kind of going there. So I think, the body language at the start and kind of what you're telling yourself is really important. And then I think, just like controlling the race. Like, I think, a lot of the people that you see that medal there were in the top 5 were like up at the front, or they were like controlling the race in some way. And I think, when I think back, like both Carissa and I feel like we were just kind of at the back of the pack the whole time. And I think that's a really different mentality too, because even when it's fartlicky and the race is changing, it's like we keep getting gapped. And I think that's a very different,
That's really tough.
you feel really different when you're like,
Yeah.
I mean, that goes back to the beginning, like when you're hanging on for dear life and you keep getting gapped and then you're trying to make up the gap. It's like you're not really getting the energy of like being in the race and competing, because you're like, you have that feeling of like, for hanging on for dear life and trying to reconnect. So I think, just learning how to like insert myself more, like approach it more confidently and insert myself more in the race, so it feels like you're actually racing rather than the focus just being like trying to hang on, but then kind of getting gap for the final time, when they go to take off the last K.
Yeah, certainly it's easier said than done, but it is so difficult to hang out in the back of a field that's going back and forth like that, like with the leaders like throwing in little surges or just the the group kind of yo-yoing to and from. Way easier said than done to like get into a position to kind of avoid that or be on the
Oh,
front end of a
absolutely.
group
Yeah.
like that. So,
It's like even when you
yeah.
first finish, you're like, oh, I just inserted myself. And then you're
Shit,
like,
I
okay,
should have
well,
been top 5, like going into the bell. It's like, well,
yeah.
yeah, like you should have, I
Yeah, like
guess, but
everyone wants that, but like, yeah, like I don't
only
know, just
5 can be there. Yeah,
the part
100%.
like the nature and yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
Well, but
totally
like
different racing.
these marks from indoor and this 10K outdoor, I feel like have definitely helped kind of bridge some of that gap, that you feel, or just with the real times, like getting down to like a lot closer to like what these women are running on the international stage. And I feel like all that does is also help elevate the rest of like American women's distance running too, right? Like the more Americans we get running marks close to you, like it's only going to make the field better. Because I do feel like we sometimes have a tendency to have a very American centric viewpoint, especially in the NCAA system. Like who are the other people coming out and being pros with me? Who's going to be at trials? Who's going to do this? And I feel like the perspective that I've gained from like our Mo interview, for example, is Mo, maybe part of it is not having to go through the same process of the Canadian trials, but Mo has always just been fixtured on like, I'm going to try to be top 3, like at this Worlds, at this Olympics, like that is the goal when he wakes up daily. And I'm interested to hear about, I don't know if there's been a shift in perspective for you since making the Olympic team, but like, I wonder if part of it has to do with, trying to like view those goals as your goals, while not dismissing the importance of trials and the difficulty of the United States Olympic trials, and World Championship trials, which are phenomenally difficult meets. But maybe focusing more on like, hey, I'm trying to like do well in this final instead of just making it there as, hey, it's my first Olympic experience. I don't know if that was your mindset going in, but it definitely can be a little bit easy to be like, this is, I finally made it here. Wow, this is amazing. Like whatever happens, or these girls are really fast. Like this is just what it, I wonder where you fell on that spectrum. And if you've noticed a transition between these marks and coming back, and what you want moving forward.
Totally. And I think, yeah, I actually like this fall I started working with a sports psych and that was super helpful. And he said a similar thing. He was basically like the people that medal or are placing top 5, like he used the Olympics, for example. He was like, it was exactly what you said about Mo. He was like, they're waking up every single day like, I'm going to be an Olympic medalist, and that's what they're training for. And he was like, if you're not bringing that sort of intention to your training and you're not thinking about that, you can't expect to get there, like you said, and like put yourself in the top 5, because again, like you can't just like make up confidence. You can't be like, oh, I
You
haven't
can't
thought about
show
this
up
at all,
having
but
not
now,
thought about it. Yeah.
yeah, now I'm standing on the line. And like, I think that's a difference too between like everyone wants to win. Like everyone wants to stand on the like that Olympic starting line and be like, everyone wants a medal, but like
Mm-hmm.
the people that have like consciously thought about it and made that their goal and like worked on that at practice every day are like the ones that are doing it. And I think that was something that was really eye-opening when he talked to me about that. I was like, yeah, like these people have been thinking about this for 365 days and more than that, like every single year for the last several years since the last Olympics. And I think, that's to your point of like Mo thinking about that too. And I think that's something that is really cool about this group. I think that's how Jerry thinks, and that's how, the older people that have been around on the team think. Like, it's like Courtney. It was like she had a huge year, and it's like she's, training to be ready to go in the summer to like medal and break the 9-minute barrier and things like that. And same with Mo. And I think that, changing that mindset and again, like bringing that like intention and attitude to practice of just like that being the goal or what you want to do, I think makes a really big difference. And like I said, I think has allowed me to reach a whole new level of training this year by even just like having that mindset.
Yeah, well, I'm curious to hear what you think about, like, so that mindset is so key, but also I feel like when I look at all of y'all's careers, but like especially yours, it's, and I think about Mo's like breaking onto the scene and slowly working his way up, like into top 10 finishes at the Olympics, and then moving off of that, and like Courtney's first couple years as a pro compared to like where she is now, like it seems to be a collection of having that vision while also knowing that it's like a staircase in terms of your moving up the levels. Like you can certainly have that vision your first year out. You could have had that vision in 2019, but I don't think that would have like gotten you to like make the team, right? Or be top 5 at the Olympics. So it seems like a mixture of having the intentionality of someone who's trying to be top 5 in the world, but you might also need the experience of going there and like seeing it and being like, damn, these people are quick, and I've got to like reapply myself to make up that gap. I mean, certainly there's phenoms who seem like they can go from 0 to world champ in a year or something, but I wonder if like how to balance that mixture of like, you have to have a little bit of experience in addition to just, you can't just have stupid vision about like,
Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah, like I'm gonna win the Olympics or something. I think
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely helps to see it and be in the final, but I wonder like did you feel like you always could have that approach, or is this something that's kind of been enabled because of it's like a combination with the success you've been having, right? And
Oh,
like that progression.
definitely. Yeah, it's definitely a combination. And I think it's definitely, like you said, the staircase is so important. Like, even thinking back to 2019, it's like you also, yeah, you had to be like realistic with yourself too. Like in 2019, it was like, yeah, like I was really like, I wasn't even in position to like make a team. So, like, I think my like vision and what I'm training for, my expectations were like very different. And I don't think, like, I mean, like I said, even after having that conversation or talking to Mo, is like, I don't think I have that vision until I go to the Olympics and I experience it. And I think that's a thing that it's like I just have said about a lot of things about the Olympic experiences. Like, people could tell me how the race goes, people could tell me to have that, intentionality, or, like, have a bigger vision, or bigger goals for competing on the global stage. But until I actually got there and did it, I don't think it would have ever like fully clicked for me to like make changes in my approach. And I had to like be there first. And I think, yeah, I think all the steps of the process, like you said, like, I think I have to go and run 14:48 before that, and then I have to like slowly, get a little bit better in training each year. And then I have to go have that experience before I think I needed to have that experience in Tokyo before I would have even been ready to run, 14:33 indoors. And I think all of those pieces are, come together to help in some way. But it's like, yeah, you need all the pieces to the puzzle.
So all of that said, and like with this mindset looking kind of forward, and like of course not dismissing trials and wanting to run well there, but really also focusing on how can I get to this like top 5, top 10 level in the world. Like taking a little bit of a step back to maybe a really important step on the staircase, which was the trials experience for you. I'd love to hear about kind of the experience in the 5K. You also came in 4th in the 10, but you know, not just the culmination, the excitement probably of winning, but like what is it like going into a meet like that with really everything on the line? Are you someone who's aware of kind of the stakes of it all? Or are you trying to just tune it out, put blinders on, and just kind of go through your routine? Like before the 5K, right? What is, I don't know, like what is this thought process like? Like how nervous are you? Are you completely prepared and set? Or and then like talk me through that race and kind of the experience of I guess getting onto the team and winning.
Yeah. Yeah, I think um leading up to the trials, um, I was like very much working on mindset, because I think the expectations and like the pressure can be a lot of like, you want to do something so bad. And I mean, that's kind of how it is. Like, the crazy thing about, the trials and any USAs is like, you have to show up on that day and perform to make the team. So I think that feels like there's just the nature of it is there's a lot, there's a lot riding on the line. So I think for several months, when we were at altitude before, I was really trying to get to focus on the mindset of like, I am going to do everything that I can. So I stand on the line feeling prepared. And I think at the end of the day, if that means me showing up and running my best race and getting 4th or 5th, it's disappointing, but in a different way. If you know that you like physically did everything you could and you showed up and like raced, to your absolute best ability physically
Definitely.
and mentally. And I think, yeah, that sounds like very cliche. I know people say that a lot, but I think I just kept repeating that in my head of like, okay, if you know that you're doing everything you can to prepare and be the best version of yourself, and I think, in some races in the past, I think I've let my mind get in the way. So I'm not running at my best because maybe I'm like, too stressed, or I feel that there's too much pressure. And, if you're trying to run with so much tension in your body, it's not you're not going to be able to run at your best. And so I really wanted to be like making sure that I, wasn't getting in my own way at the trials. And I think I knew like, okay, if you stand on the line and you're confident and you put yourself in the race and you run to the best of your physical and mental ability, then that's all you can ask for at the end of the day, and if you get like beat, then your competitors were better than you on that day and you can't ask for anything else. And I think just really like consciously working on that, I think I was able to approach the trials with like, you still feel like the pressure and the weight of it, but it's like a little bit more, it's just more manageable, and you're more excited to see what you can do because you know that you're prepared.
I feel like that is objectively the healthiest mindset going into a race. And I'm really impressed by it because I know for me, like there's similar things I feel like around health too, and injuries and like things you can tell, like, hey, am I maximizing what I can do? And then like not really being in full control of the result. And I feel like for races, especially, I know for me, like that's something I would tell myself. And then if I did come in fourth and fifth, would probably still be pissed about being like,
Oh,
well, did they really
absolutely.
maximize? So
Absolutely.
I wonder how much of that, like, obviously you won. I mean, you've had losses too. It's not like you haven't experienced this, but I feel like it's something that it's not that it's easy to say. And it certainly seems like you've lived it and embodied it and worked very hard to cultivate this mindset. But it's the type of thing that like when it works, it works. And it's like, well, yeah, of course, I was just going to do my best and I
Yeah.
happened to win. But
Oh, it's so much
fourth
easier
and fifth still
said
sucks.
now. Like it's also
Yeah.
like I fully recognize that. Like saying it now, it's like, well, yeah, like it worked out and you made the team. So I also think it's different to look back and be like, I would have been totally fine because yeah, like you would have been like I would have been super like upset if I was fifth, But I think, yeah, I think it's just like I don't know. I like to think of it as like almost like two different types of disappointment. Like that
Yeah.
sort of disappointment is like, yes, you like had this dream and goal that like you didn't achieve, but you did everything you can, versus like I think I've just been in a lot of races, like I said, where I feel like I've gotten in my own way or didn't feel like I prepared and did everything I could. And I feel like that's like a gnawing disappointment because you're just like, I don't know. I didn't see what I was like fully capable of um on the day. And I think that's like a very different, I don't know. That's a kind
That's
of
what
like,
sticks with you though. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, like rumination almost, and just like gnawing away at you of like, okay, I could have done these things better. But no, definitely. I mean, I fully acknowledge that it's much easier to say that now, like given the result of the trials
No,
for
but
sure.
but but you're so right about like I think that it's there's never going to be a scenario where even if you're thinking the exact way you described, right? Like you're always going to be upset fourth and fifth. I think what you're talking about is the difference between like being upset because you didn't make a team, which is like a huge goal,
Yeah.
and the additional like disappointment of potentially not maximizing your ability on race day, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like, and what you seem to be like, all you can do is control if you maximize your ability on race day, and but I think it's healthy and fair and warranted to be disappointed if you still don't like win the race or whatever,
Oh,
right? But it's just,
totally.
but you're never gonna like, you're just certainly not saying like, oh, I would have been just dandy about coming fourth if I
Yeah,
tried hard. It's like
yeah.
you're still pissed, but you don't have that. But there's an ability to sleep at night because you did what you could put out, and it seems like you've worked really a ton mentally on allowing yourself to be like almost smooth like in that front. And hey, I'm gonna maximize and not let any like obstacles get in my way mentally or physically, and the chips will fall where they may. And it seems like it's been working for you over the last year or so, like a couple of years, like undoubtedly, which is awesome to see. It's really special to see.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, no, I think again it is. I just think when like and everyone has had that, and everyone's had experiences where they feel like they didn't maximize their potential. It's just a feeling that's yeah, so much worse because you just have so many more questions of like what could I have done differently, versus like you said, it's like, everyone in the sport like wants to win, they want to make teams, they want to medal, and so it's like everyone's going to be disappointed if they come up short of that. But I think, yeah, it's a different type of disappointment than not knowing what you could have done because you feel like you left preparation on the table, or you feel like, yeah, you didn't show up in the mindset that was, conducive to being at your best.
Well, so kind of one of my last questions, I guess, going off of that, is this is obviously hyper individualized to you, right? And you're working with like a sports psych, or you're kind of putting the pieces together on your own. But do you have any like bite-sized, or at least like speakable kind of philosophies or tips you use to allow yourself to enter a race kind of prepared to fire at max, at all cylinders, and not get held up by kind of the doubts that I'm sure a lot of us experience on the start line, or the nerves? Like where do you turn to? Are you like relying on training or your past races or efforts, or is it something more like intangible and inward? Like I'd love to hear about that. I'm sure listeners who've struggled with nerves and pre-race and anxiety and tough performances, I mean, that's kind of all of us in a way. I'm sure we'd
Yeah,
all love to
yeah.
hear about it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think in the past I was actually too focused on like the training itself, or like past results, like getting basically all my confidence from that. And I think that is, yeah, a pretty like flimsy place I've learned to get confidence, of just like, you can't necessarily, you can't wait for, to start knocking workouts out of the park, or to have like a couple good races to then have confidence. Like the confidence has to come before that. And I think something that's been really helpful for me is just focusing on that preparation piece. So like focusing, that's something that I like to think about a lot, is like focusing on the 1%, whether that be whatever's best for you. So if you, like for me, I found like I said, I would get like pretty nervous before races, and then be like super tense and not able to run at my best. So I was like, okay, I'm going to like consciously make goals before workouts on like how to work on that specific skill, like in a training session. So now the training session, I'm taking away more than just um the workout itself, but I'm taking confidence from knowing that like I'm working on, concrete skills that I can put into practice for racing. And I think it's like, figuring out what works best for you, like recovery wise. Like, does your body feel best if you like roll or stretch, or, doing the strength, or like, the pre-run activation, or whatever it is. Like, I think there's a lot of different things that I've found that you can get confidence from, like doing on a day to day. And I think that's where you can line up, and like everyone's still going to be nervous, but you can be like, just kind of have that foundational confidence of like knowing that you did everything you could to get there. And I think that's way more about than just like the workouts and the races themselves, but like your whole like kind of approach to it. And I think that's something that can be really helpful to focus on too. And I think that helps you, at least for me, like that's helped me also be able to better like focus on myself and not get caught up in the comparison trap, because it really forces you to kind of sit down and figure out what works for you, figure out like, okay, this thing makes me feel better, this thing doesn't. And then you're not getting caught up in like, oh, okay, my teammates rolling, but my body doesn't feel better when I
Yeah.
roll. So I'm not like tempted to get caught up in what they're doing, or I feel better doing slightly less mileage and I can stay healthy. So I'm not tempted to get caught up in my teammates' higher mileage, because I know I can like have confidently like slowed down to realize this is what works best for me, and this is like how I'm going to be at my best.
I feel like that is such an insightful answer. And I'm so glad that you don't pin confidence on workouts and races purely, right? I feel like that creates a whole bunch of traps, especially if you struggle to stay healthy, right? Not only does it create traps with that, where okay, now I need like a certain number of great workouts back before I'm prepared to run at a certain level, or if I bomb this race, now there's just like a spiral of, well, I'll probably bomb the next one because I'm not
Yeah.
like, because the last one was bad, and that's my data point. And I feel like not only is that a possible trap, but so is the fact that you're probably not doing the best workouts of anyone in the world. And yet your goals are to be like a top 5, top 3, top 10, like to win medals, right? And to try to win these events. So if you come into it like, I get my confidence from workouts, and you're lining up against like an Olympic final, like there are probably people who've done some sick workouts, right, in that final. And you can carry that kind of confidence at the high school levels, or maybe at the collegiate levels, but when it gets down to what it seems like the great ones do on the pro level, is like they have the internal confidence from the way they live their life and the boundary, like the limits that they've kind of found with their body, which seems to be what you're describing, right? With like what works for me might not work for everyone else, but if it works for me, and it seems like finding those limitations and like kind of trying to push them slowly has has such a valuable effect. And the only other thing is I've heard, remember Alex Osberg and Stephen Fahey used to tell me the same thing with doing workouts in college of like, don't just like physically do the workout. You know, if there are things you need to work on in terms of race mindset or dealing with pain or pressure or all that, like try to really like test your mind and like simulate like race experiences, right? Or what that day is going to feel like. Like don't just passively go through it. And that way, exactly what you're saying, you can get, you know, double kind of the value for the price of one workout. And it certainly seems like I've heard a lot of that reflected in like, so like others like of our past teammates, but also just really great runners overall. It seems like that's the way you've got to try to like take your confidence in and kind of expand your running to get like from an elite level to another elite level and just kind of keep going up the chain. So it's awesome to hear that.
Yeah, no, it's like it's crazy though, like you said, like again, I just feel like I wasn't that great at this until like recently of like bringing in like them, like, you know, being more present like mentally or intentional in the workouts, like you said, of like, okay, setting, you know, some sort of mental goal or getting yourself kind of in that race mindset, because then you show up to a race and if you haven't raced in a while, it's like now you have like nerves and adrenaline and like all of these things, but you were being super passive in practice and now
It's a
you're
whole another thing to learn, right? Like now
yeah,
you got to go through all
yeah.
the, yeah,
And now it like it
definitely.
makes sense, like standing on the line being like super tense or overwhelmed because it's like you haven't worked at all about, you haven't been in that mindset maybe, especially like you're saying when, you know, when you're coming back from injury or something, if you haven't raced in a while, like now you haven't raced in months and you are like throwing yourself into this environment that you haven't been in a long time, and like maybe you're not fully confident because you missed some time, and now it's like super overwhelming because you haven't like been anywhere close to being in that mindset, you know, if you're not like trying to work on some of those things in practice as well.
Definitely. I think that there's just constant value in putting yourself in situations, right, where you're pushing either your mind or your body. Not, and you got to give yourself a break too, right? I feel like recovery, like chilling
Yeah,
out, like having easy days, all that is super important. But like definitely touching that kind of mental piece periodically, often, right? And like trying to keep that like warm and ready to go helps you. And then the last thing, exactly what you're saying, I would also echo, like knowing what works for you allows you to stand in that line and not be quite as nervous about, did I do the right things for this, right? Like if you
yeah,
know, hey, I need like 4 pre-meet strides and I don't need 6 and I don't need 8 and they only need to be 100 meters. Like if you know that and you do it, it's like, I like, it sounds silly in a way, but it's like, if this is what it is for me, then this is what it is. And, you know, I mean, I've talked to Grant in depth about like y'all's training, and it's very, it seems like the little things are very much controlled by the athlete, right? And it
mm-hmm.
seems like in a lot of ways, Jerry is like, I like come to the workout, whatever you need, ready to go. And it's kind of up to you to find that. And one thing I'd encourage, like, you know, like younger listeners or even like also college age listeners or, you know, people doing this like post college is definitely just like taking that extra time to find what precisely works for you and like and trusting that, you know, and then having conversations with your coaches if that's going to go against what
Yeah,
team protocol is. But it seems like that's so important, like to figure out what works exactly for you in order to like maximize not only your confidence and lack of nerves, but just your performance in general.
totally. And I think like along those lines, two things. I think first is like seeing it as like a very like iterative process too, you know? Like I think you have to see it as like very much trial and error. And like I would say when I first, I don't know, when I first went to college or even when I first joined this group, I think also seeing like, okay, I can learn, what can I learn from my teammates? What are things that I can pick up that maybe I, you know, like blind spots I had that I didn't realize. And, you know, I don't know. That's what I learned a lot when I first joined this team of like, okay, what does like recovery look like? Or what does, you know, how can I like improve my warm up before workout or whatever it is? So it's like looking to like learn things from the people around you to kind of, you know, figure out then what works best for you. And I think not being afraid to like try some of those different things and then be like, oh, okay, yeah, like this didn't work for me. And now I'm going to, you know, figure out what does. And And so I think kind of approaching it like that as a process and like slowly figuring it out piece by piece is really helpful. And then it saves so much mental energy too when you do. Like, I mean, that was like your example of the strides, but like that's a real thing. Like, I don't know, I've had that in the past where it's like, I don't know, you're before a race and you're already having, you know, all these like thoughts and nerves and emotions, and now you're like seeing a teammate or someone else do 6 strides and you're wondering if you should do 6 you know, and it's like that's just like unnecessary mental energy that if you really find like certain, you know, routines or things that work for you, then it's nice to not even have to be like looking around worried about what anyone else is doing, because you can save your energy for your race and you know what you're doing is going to like help you to be your best when you stand on the line.
Definitely. Definitely. Well, hey, we're already over an hour, so as we move towards wrapping up, I'm not sure if you even know the answer to this, but next race is on the calendar. I heard you might want to get back into a 15, see about doing something like that. But do you have anything actually mapped out yet, or are you guys still waiting to hear what it's going to be moving into?
Still,
Yeah.
still waiting to hear. So, we'll see. But I hear maybe some of you guys, are you going to race? Are some Stanford people going to Mount Sac? I hear maybe.
Mount Sac is happening. We also have our opener this weekend, which a lot of guys are
Nice.
going to be doing who didn't qualify for nationals, which should be exciting. I'm holding off a little bit, dealing with a couple nagging injuries that I'm trying to get past. But a lot of guys in my dorm are opening up, and yeah, it should be fun. So we've got that, and then I think we're kind of going every 2 weeks, which should line up with Mount Sac. I don't know if any of y'all will be down there, but maybe that's a place for overlap. I'm not sure where your guys'
I want
races are
to.
going to be.
I want to do
That
a
would be
15
cool.
at Mount Sac. When I heard that you guys want to be going, I was like, even extra incentive to race there and see all of you guys. Wait, do you know when you'll open up, or are you just gonna kind of see if you can get your body
Got to get
under
the calf
control
right, but
first?
hopefully
Okay.
it would be around then. It might end up being closer to conferences as well.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, just gotta make sure that I have the requisite, at least enough base to hit something fast. Yeah, but that is definitely a goal to try to get back on the track this spring, which would be, it's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
I also I see you wore Stanford red in support of
I
the
did.
alum school.
I
Yeah,
did. Had to
love
rep
that.
Cardinal
Maybe it's
red, you
Bowerman
know.
red too. I don't know if there's even much of a difference there. You might have just gotten lucky with it, but I, of course, very much appreciative. Yeah, and honestly, we could do a whole other episode just about your transitioning high school to college, your experience here, moving into your first year as a pro. So there might need to be a part 2 sometime soon in the future. Kind of discussing more of those like gritty details that I'm sure people are really curious about. I'm really curious about as well. So yeah, I think we'd love to have you back on to maybe talk about those in a future ep as well.
Well, let me know. I would always be honored to come back on the Halfstep Pod. So thanks for having me today, though. I'm glad we
Yeah,
got
of
to chat.
course.
I haven't seen you in forever, so
I know. We definitely have to link up at one of these meets. It should hopefully that can happen. I don't know if Sean or Vanessa or a third person just opened the door there, but that was
yeah,
almost a
that was
cute little cameo.
a little cameo from Vanessa.
Well, yeah, we're definitely going to be interviewing the house at some point, like going through as people are racing and gearing up. So excited for that. And Elise, this was awesome. I learned a lot. I hope that everyone listening did as well. It's been awesome tracking the improvements in the journey, and looking forward to seeing all that you accomplish this year, moving into trials and hopefully worlds at home in Eugene.
Well, thank you, Connor. Thanks for having me on. I had fun. So
Of course,
hopefully
and
talk again soon.
yeah, hopefully soon. And thanks to everyone for listening to another ep of the Half Step Pod. We'll catch you guys next time. Cheers.